Glenn Hubbard is on the line with us. He's the senior economics advisor to Mitt Romney. He's an economist and dean at the Columbia University Graduate School of Business. Previously served as the deputy assistant secretary at the U.S. Department of the Treasury from 91 to 93 and chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors during the Bush administration from 2001 to 2003. His website, glennhubbard.net, and many are speculating that if Mitt Romney is elected president, he could even be the next Fed chairman. Glenn Hubbard, welcome. It's a pleasure and an honor to have you with us, sir.
It's my pleasure. Thanks.
How is it that after, if you look at the last 60 or 70 years of history, we see that average wages tracked productivity almost perfectly, continuously, until the Reagan administration. Then wages flattened out and productivity continued to increase, and all that money seemed to go to CEO pay instead of wages. We've seen now the result of Reaganomics, trickle-down economics, whatever you want to call it, supply-side economics, for 30 years. It's been a disaster for the middle class. How do you think you can continue to sell this to the American people?
We have long-term structural problems in America that aren't Democrat problems or Republican problems. They're problems we have to deal with. And we have seen wages for many people fail to keep pace with productivity. Compensation has kept pace with productivity, so how could both of those things be true? We've seen very sharply rising healthcare costs, and we've seen problems and opportunity for many lower and middle income Americans. We really need to rethink our employment policy in the United States. We want to increase growth, but it's got to be broadly shared.
So how would you do that?
Well, first, getting growth is about changing our tax code, getting the size of government right, getting regulation that supports growth.
Isn't it about creating demand?
Well, you can't create demand in an environment that has this much policy uncertainty. Business executives I speak to are very concerned about hiring people or making investments with this level of policy uncertainty.
But
we can fix that.
Respectfully, no business executive, I'm one of them, no business executive in his right mind would refuse to hire somebody if there was demand for his products. If he could make more money hiring more employees.
Well, that's true, but let's unpack what you're saying. In an environment of policy uncertainty where you don't know what future taxes are, the future size of government, the future of regulation.
But nobody's ever known those things.
Well, with respect, this is the greatest level of uncertainty. For economists who measure this, we've probably cost our economy since 2007 more than 2 million jobs just from policy uncertainty. And that's something we can fix. But you started to ask me a really important question about what we can do for lower and middle income Americans. And it really is about changing our employment policy to have much better training programs, much more focus on education and skill development. This country can do better, both Democrats and Republicans.
So by policy uncertainty, are you talking about the effort over the last 3.5 years by the Republican Party to obstruct all of the, or most of the Obama administration programs that might move the economy forward, that would bring jobs home from overseas, things like that?
Well, we may want to have a little history lesson, you and I, because the first 2 years of President Obama's presidency, he had a Democratic Congress. Anything he wanted to do for the economy, he could have done then.
He could not.
He didn't.
The rules of the Senate allowed Tom Coburn to stop piece of legislation after legislation after legislation, and you know it, sir.
Well, that's not really true on tax and budget, but that's arcana. We can certainly disagree on policy.
Nancy Pelosi, for example, got a piece of legislation out of the House of Representatives when there was, both were controlled by the Democrats, that said no more tax breaks for companies that send jobs overseas, like Bain used to do. And by the way, we will give you a tax break if you bring your jobs back home. It got a majority. It got more than 50 votes in the Senate, but the Republicans filibustered it. That's just one of many examples. I can give you over 200 examples if you want the long list, but of programs and policies that would have directly helped the average American worker that Republicans blocked, in my opinion, because they were trying to harm the economy to advance the interests of the Republican presidential nominee, in this case, Mitt Romney.
I don't think that President Obama wants to harm the economy. I don't think Mitt Romney wants to harm the economy. I think there's serious differences in policy, and we need to make America a safe place to invest in again, and we can. And it requires both sides compromising on sensible policies that not only enhance growth, but really, as you said quite correctly, share the benefits of that growth.
So where First of all, I'm curious about you, if you don't mind. How would you describe yourself in terms of economic theory? I mean, we've had Alan Greenspan, who was sort of an Ayn Randian. We've people following von Hayek. We've got the Milton's Friedman School of Economics. We've got, obviously, there has been people following what's his name, John Kenneth Galbraith and others. What is your economic philosophy, if in a nutshell, if you don't mind?
No, it's a great question. I think that economics is a powerful discipline to help us understand the power that markets can bring to bear to make people's lives better and to help us solve social programs and problems around the world. Mm-hmm. And I call myself more of a practical problem solver.
So you're more of a pragmatist?
I would consider that, yes.
Yeah. Are there any countries that you can identify in the world that have successful economies and more importantly, successful middle classes that have not done so by significant government involvement, but rather have done so by the free market?
Well, the United States, historically, I think, meets that example of definitely rising economic growth being broadly shared. There are a number of trends around the world that have made that tough the world over, as you know. But we can change policy in this country to help make that happen. Unfortunately, on both sides of the aisle, there's not always support for that.
Wasn't the United States building of the great middle class in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and early 80s, wasn't that the consequence of government policies, though? The GI Bill, support for home loans, the Eisenhower transportation bills, Eisenhower building schools and hospitals. I mean, we were at 127% of GDP in debt after World War II. He basically stimulated us out of it and paid off that debt. Isn't that an example of government policy creating a middle class?
It's certainly the case that government has a strong role to play in creating an educated society and created infrastructure. But America's growth, any successful nation's growth, is about innovation in the private sector, not about government.
Okay. And where do you see, if Mitt Romney's elected president, what would be your first policy recommendations?
Well, what Governor Romney has said is that day one he would introduce energy regulation that would create jobs in the energy sector, to move from Obamacare to a much more market-oriented healthcare system, tax reform and spending restraint, all together, which could create another 12 million jobs in this country in his first term.
Aren't those just variations on what George Bush did?
Not at all. George Bush actually, sadly, in my view, let spending get out of control under his watch. Governor Romney is proposing to restore the size of government to its pre-financial crisis level, about 20% of GDP.
Yeah, well, and it's fairly small right now, is it not?
What's that?
I thought that we were taking in about 18% of GDP right now.
No, government spending is about 24% of GDP.
Right.
And Governor Romney would put that back to its historical average of 20% of GDP. If we keep government at 24% of GDP, we'll have to have massive tax increases on everyone to pay for that, or cut back strongly on education.
And yet Canada is at 53% of GDP. Most of your Scandinavian countries are over 60% of GDP. As you know, most Northern European countries are between 45 and 55% of GDP. They all seem to be working just fine. Why should we be fixated on 20%?
Well, let's keep in mind some of the Nordic countries you mentioned actually have had major tax and spending reforms and actually have more favorable regulation than the United States. The model that's closer to your worldview is continental Europe, and I don't think we want to go there.
Okay. All right. Glenn Hubbard, the Senior Economic Advisor to Mitt Romney, economist and Dean at the Columbia University Graduate School, glennhubbard.net, his website. Sir, thank you so much for being with us today.
My pleasure.
Great talking.